Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined this Thursday morning by Derek Brown and by Andrew Erickson. And fellas, we are talking about some must-start players here as we get into Week 8. We will start, as always, with the running backs. And DBro, we will start with you.
Oh, Lord help me. I'm going to recommend Joe Mixon. I don't want to do it, but the numbers say to do it, so I'm going to do it. Joe Mixon, I think the misnomer about this San Francisco 49ers run defense needs to get brought up here. We saw the Vikings run well against them, and I think that's not a fluke. If you look at their deeper metrics, they have not been a shutdown elite run defense this season. They have the 7th lowest stuff rate. They're allowing the 12th highest yards after contact per attempt and the 12th highest yards per carry to zone runs, which comprise 53% of Joe Mixon's rushing volume this year. So, as gross as it sounds, guys, giddy up, Joe Mixon.
Yeah, DBro, Joe Mixon in the expert consensus rankings is RB17. And actually, Erickson, Fitz, and Joe all have him RB17 as well. But you've got him up at RB10. So you're definitely coming in more aggressively.
I am. I mean, look, we're just following the process, baby. I think he's going to turn in an RB 1 week. I think the efficiency is not going to be great, but in these plus matchups, you see very inefficient running backs get a boost. So I think that's what happens to Mixon this week.
Erickson, who's your must-start running back?
Dameon Pierce for the Houston Texans. Got a dream matchup this week against the Carolina Panthers. Second most fantasy points allowed to running backs this season. I know everyone's freaking out about, oh no, Devin Singletary's taking over the backfield. It's like, guys, is a 1-game sample size where we had Singletary outsnap Dameon Pierce. Could it be the start of a trend? Yeah, it's totally possible. But we also have a 5-game sample size of Dameon Pierce being the bell cow for the Houston Texans. So I'm going to use the larger sample size of what we've seen all year long of the Texans being Dameon Pierce's, he's the number one guy there. And specifically the red zone. Why are we starting running backs in fantasy football? Because we wanted them to score touchdowns. That's ultimately how they score the most points. He is still their guy in the red zone. Even last week or before their bye week when Devin Singletary was playing more, Dameon Pierce was still the guy in the red zone. Look, the Panthers, the reason why they're so bad against running backs is because they give up more rushing touchdowns to running backs than any other team on defense. So Pierce is due for some touchdown regression. He's -3 touchdowns under expectation just based on the usage he has. Only the aforementioned Joe Mixon has more red zone carries and just 1 touchdown than Dameon Pierce does. So I think we're going to find him hit pay dirt once, maybe twice in this matchup. And honestly, if you are looking for a deeper play, I think Devin Singletary, if he is more involved, he also benefits from the matchup too. So he's a deeper play, but I do like Pierce a lot in this matchup against Carolina.
Pierce down at RB27. I assume that's too low for you, Erickson.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's way too low. The Texans have one of the highest implied team totals on the slate. He's RB27. I mean, I have him in top 20 running back.
That's in half PPR. Where do you have him, DBro? Is RB27, is that also too low for you?
I'm hand holding with consensus. I have him an RB27. There's just a few guys in that range. I've got Gus Edwards over him. I've got Jaylen Warren over him. And I don't think that people understand that Jaylen Warren has been a top 24, but Jaylen Warren's been an RB2 in 4 of the last 5 games quietly.
Let's go to your next must-start running back here, DBro.
Well, it's time for Javonte Williams to get unleashed, baby. He's coming off arguably his best game of the season. The highest snap share he's seen at 53% of the snaps, 18 touches, almost 100 total yards. And this is the dream matchup, man. The Kansas City Chiefs have just decided, we're not going to stop running backs. And you can't stop Juggernaut Javonte anyway, baby. He's top 10 in explosive run rate and yards after contact per attempt. You look at the matchup. The Kansas City Chiefs are allowing the 10th highest explosive run rate. Javonte is going to be an RB1 this week. He gets 20 touches, which I think he can get this week. And Denver just says, look, we're taking the training wheels off. It's time for you to go. Let's go, baby. I've got him up at RB11 right now.
Yeah, this is another one where you're at 11. Erickson, Fitz, and Joey P all have him at RB23. The consensus is actually RB22 in ECR. Again, this is all for half PPR. So once again, you're kind of planting your flag here and are the aggressive one.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm following the talent and we're following the matchup. And the injury put us back, okay? But look at last week. whether you want to turn on the film, you want to look at the numbers, everything says Javonte Williams is off of this. And we saw this with Breece Hall. Eventually the Jets said, you know what? We're unleashing him. We're taking the shackles off. We're going to sit here and let him do his damn thing. And I think that's what's going to happen this week for Javonte Williams.
There are always fun questions around the NFL this time of year, like who are the pretenders, who are the contenders. We're almost halfway through the NFL season, but DraftKings Sportsbook is still pumping out unbeatable offers every single game. New customers can bet just $5 on anything to get $200 instantly in bonus bets, and DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of a sweetener offer every game day this October. There are actually 7 games on the Week 8 slate with a spread under a field goal on DraftKings, so there should be tons of close finishes this week. My favorite of those games is probably Jags-Steelers in Pittsburgh, with Jacksonville 2.5-point favorites on the road. Should be a fun matchup between the Jags offense and the Steelers defense, so I'm really looking forward to that one. And of course, as a Ravens fan, I will be pulling for the Jaguars. However you guys plan to bet that one, get in on the football action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the app now and use code FantasyPros. New customers can bet just $5 on anything to get $200 instantly in bonus bets, only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code FantasyPros. The crown is yours. Erickson, give me your next must-start running back.
We mentioned him, Gus Edwards. It's a great matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. 4th fantasy points allowed per game to running backs. And Gus Edwards has kind of been the preferred running back. Worm, you're the Ravens expert, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like Gus Edwards really gets the more favorable usage when the Ravens are playing ahead, when they can kind of establish the run a little bit more. I think they like using him more at the goal line than Justice Hill. And I think this is a matchup where, again, if the Ravens are playing with a lead, then they can feed Gus Edwards a little bit more. Whereas Justice Hill is someone that they would use more in like a back and forth contest where they need to use him more in the passing game, because I think they prefer Hill as a pass catcher. So I think the game script, again, the Ravens are on the road, but they are big favorites against the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals are not good against running backs, and Gus Edwards has, he does his thing, man. Like, he's efficient when he gets the ball in his hands. He's not sexy play, but he's productive. He's been productive even in tougher matchups this year. So I'm going to continue to roll with Gus Edwards.
Where do you have him ranked, Erickson? Because I've got him as a top 24 running back this week.
He's like right outside my top 24 guys.
Yeah,
so,
I think that he's still sitting at RB 24.
Yeah, to answer your question, Erickson, early on in the year, there was some Justice Hill usage like near the goal line that I was a little confused by because Gus is so good there. They definitely kind of got back to what I expected, where he's been, that guy, the closer, the guy down near the goal line, the guy in against worse teams when they're trying to close out a game.
I have in my notes as the banger.
Yes,
Gus Edwards.
I was really impressed with him against the Lions because the Lions are so good against the run, and I thought specifically against running backs of the style of Gus. And he looked good. I mean, even the 80-yard catch and run aside, which was more of a broken play than anything else. Even aside from that,
destroying yards per route run
baby.
forever.
80 yards on the screen. Let's go.
But like, if you look at his game log this season since week 2, 10 for 62, 11 for 51, 15 for 48, 12 for 48, 16 for 41, 14 for 64. These are not mind-blowing numbers, but he's a guy, again, that they like to run with when they get up close. Lamar has taken a few of those rushing touchdowns this year. He hasn't done that the last couple of years, so I don't know if that will continue. All in all, again, he's not like a super high ceiling play, but in a matchup where the Ravens should be winning and should win by a lot, I think we're going to see a lot of Gus. So I'm right there with you on that pick. DBro, give me your next must-start running back.
All right. We talked about this in previous backfields and stuff, and with Houston, could the worm be turning there? I think we're going to see a change in usage in Minnesota. And if you look at last week's game, all I needed to see, Cam Akers is out there salting away the clock. They trusted him to be the late game hammer and not Alexander Madison. And if you look at Cam Akers' production as well, since he became a Minnesota Viking, over that stretch amongst 48 qualifying running backs, Cam Akers is 20th in missed tackles forced per attempt, and he's 17th in yards after contact per attempt. So these are not amazing numbers, but Cam Akers is playing better on a per-touch basis than people are giving him credit. And what we saw of the usage of this backfield, and it's a smash matchup versus the Packers, 8th highest explosive run rate allowed, 7th highest missed tackle rate allowed. Cam Akers could lead this backfield this week, and if he does that, we're talking about a guy that could really be a high-end flex play that could sneak into being a top 24, top 30 running back this week.
Yeah, I had this question for the Who Do I Start segment, but I'm going to step on those toes a bit and just ask you now. I want to get some interesting names that you're starting Cam Akers over because he's a guy that obviously has burned a lot of people. He's not ranked very highly in, the expert consensus rankings across the industry. So where do you have him, and who are some names that people might be surprised to hear you would rather start Cam Akers over?
Give me Cam Akers over either one of the Carolina backs. I'm starting him over Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard. I will start him over the Bears running backs. I will start Cam Akers over A.J. Dillon, even if Aaron Jones is out. Give me Cam Akers over Kareem Hunt. All of these different parts or pieces, I will take Cam Akers in a great matchup on an offense that can move the ball above all these other RB3s, and we don't know what to do with them and stuff like that. Give me Cam Akers in a split backfield in a situation where this team is showing they want to lean more because his workload is going up. And Alexander Mattison, what has he done to this point to show that he should keep the workload that he's had? So give me Cam Akers over all those guys.
Erickson, where do you have Akers ranked? I assume you're not quite as aggressive as DBro is, but are you also above consensus on him?
No, I'm right with consensus for Cam Akers. It's just, look, yeah, he got more usage last week, but we saw Alexander Mattison have a lot of usage the week before. So it's like, until I see a trend, until I see back-to-back weeks of like, he's getting more involved, like, I'm still going to be hesitant to pull the trigger. I get the matchup is good, and usually you can start running backs. So I think in a pinch, it makes sense to start Akers if you're hurting at running back because the matchup is good and he's going to see some type of work. But I mean, I would not be surprised, again, if it's just like Alexander Mattison gets 15 carries, Akers gets 5. Like, that would not surprise me at all either. So for me, it's just, I'm not as aggressive on Cam Akers just because I'm not as confident that he's going to see like double-digit carries for the second straight week.
Let's stick with you, Erickson, and give me your last must-start running back.
Guy I am confident is going to get at least double-digit touches. Emari Demercado for the Arizona Cardinals. Look. So he was super disappointing when we all added him off the waivers, but the one thing that we stood out to him was like he still played the most snaps. So I made this in the fantasy forecast article I read. I was like, guys, like I understand he was a bust. He got like 0 touches, but he still played most snaps. So like hold on to him. Like you don't have to start him. Just hold on to him and see what happens. And then this past week, he's an ultimate bell cow, 80% of the snaps because the Cardinals are always trailing in games. And he's the guy they prefer on third downs and passing situations. So he had 13 carries last week. He had a lot of volume in the passing game. He got 4 passes. So again, if this Ravens game goes as we all projected to be, where they're trailing, they're behind, they have to throw the football against the Ravens. Well, the Ravens aren't weak really anywhere on defense except, in terms of DVOA, the weakest they are is against running backs in the passing game. Mm-hmm. Last week we saw Jahmyr Gibbs have a really productive game because he was involved in the passing game. So whether it's garbage time, Demercado is going to be on the field, and that's going to translate into fantasy production. So I think he's had 2 out of his last 3 games have been productive for fantasy. So I'm confident that he's going to at least have a floor with the role that he has as the Arizona Cardinals bell cow, as long as James Conner remains sidelined. So I like Demercado.
Totally with you, man. I've got him as a top 24 running back this week.
Yeah, I was going to say DBro's even higher, according to the rankings on him than Erickson is.
RB23.
Yeah. Let's go to the aforementioned Who Do I Start tool. Again, this is free to use at fantasypros.com/start. Anybody listening can head there and put in your own start or sit questions, up to 4 players at a time. You can even pick and choose from which experts your decision draws. Again, that's free to use at fantasypros.com/start. DBro, are you starting Joe Mixon or Josh Jacobs this week?
Joe Mixon. Easy. What has Josh Jacobs done? And he's got a wretched matchup. And we don't even know who the Raiders starting quarter. If it's Brian Hoyer, are they even going to sniff the red zone this week? Doubtful. Very doubtful.
Who do you like in that one, Josh Jacobs or Joe Mixon, Erickson?
God, they're both usage monsters that don't do anything with it. Oh, man. I guess if I had to just play, I guess I just have more faith in the Bengals offense overall. It's like, it just goes with Mixon, it's just about touchdowns. And that's the thing with Jacobs. It's like the reason he's been so bad is because he hasn't scored any touchdowns. And the same thing with Joe Mixon. But if you're going to make a bet on, all right, who's going to score more touchdowns this week, the Bengals or the Raiders? Probably going to bet on the Bengals. So as good as the usage is for Josh Jacobs, it really hasn't mattered. So yeah, I guess it would be Joe Mixon for me too.
DBro, are you starting Javonte Williams or Gus Edwards?
Oh, Javonte Williams. I've got Javonte Williams as an RB1. I will start Javonte Williams. I'm curious where you're at on this, Erickson. I know this is probably going to be, I'm on the other side of this. Javonte Williams or DeAndre Swift?
DeAndre Swift.
Okay. I'm going Javonte.
Well, I am going to ask Erickson because he picked Gus Edwards as one of his starts. The same question, Gus Edwards or Javonte Williams?
I think I'd probably still go with Javonte. I mean, I still have Javonte as like a top 24. Again, the thing with Gus, like we talked about when we were mentioning him, is like he's a floor play. Like again, he's not going to catch an 80-yard touchdown or an 80-yard pass every single. That'll probably never ever happen again. Like, to be totally honest here. So,
are you saying that Gus Edwards is not going to take a screen for 80 yards, Erickson? Oh, no, we're gonna steal my heart.
All Gus Edwards did was basically break everyone's yards per route run with running backs. Like, oh, Gus Edwards is the number one in yards per route run. He's a great pass catcher. It's like, yeah, because he caught one 80-yard pass. Like, so of course he's going to break all the systems.
The way they talked about that after the game, like I thought watching it live, I was like, oh, that's a really great play design. Like, use the threat of Lamar. Everybody's going to come for him, and just kind of a nice dump off. And they basically were like, yeah, that's just Lamar being Lamar. Like, he just like saw it and decided to do it. It wasn't even like necessarily a Todd Monken play design. So yeah, even the Ravens were not like, ooh, we have this play we could finally draw up for Gus Edwards.
Yeah, I think Javonte has more upside. He's a 3-down skill set, catches more passes, and as annoying as it is, like McLaughlin is always like getting involved, especially near the red zone. I think Javonte just has a higher ceiling.
How about Dameon Pierce or Ramondre Stevenson?
Ooh.
Dameon Pierce for me. Look, I think this is the game he scores a lot of touchdowns. Like, this is what the Panthers do. Like, they give up touchdowns to running backs. And the thing with Ramondre is, like, you're always like worried about, like, oh, is Zeke gonna score this week? Like, again, the Patriots offense benefited a lot from the Bills defense being like absolute trash. So I think that Pierce is still the play for me.
How about Emari Demercado or Najee Harris?
I have them ranked back to back, and I'm going to go with the guy that's the bell cow in his backfield and not the guy that's in a split committee, which is Najee. So I'm going to go with Demercado in the 80%. Look, Jason, like, we all care about volume until it's like a guy that's like, oh, well, he's a third string running back. It's like, guys, well, he's still seeing 80% of the snaps, so like you have to play him in fantasy. So Demercado for me.
Imagine telling somebody 8 months ago that at this point we'd say the guy who's the bell cow is somebody named Emari Demercado and not Najee Harris. Let's get to the must-start wide receivers here. DBro, starting with you.
Well, I'm gonna lead off with a guy that I've not shown a lot of love both this offseason and in season, and he's taken another leap to his game, and I got to give him flowers, man. I got to sit here and talk about him. It's George Pickens. He's been balling out all year. He's the wide receiver 18, and even with Deontay Johnson back last week, 32% target share, 61% air yard share. Those are just magical numbers. And now you look at how you beat the Jacksonville Jaguars is with deep passing, and that's going to happen with George Pickens this week. Jacksonville's allowed the third most deep passing yards in this season and the 11th highest deep completion rate. I think George Pickens is going off this week.
Yeah, it wasn't just you. Pickens is a guy that I felt like got a lot of hate over the offseason. And, I mean, it's not like he's, setting the world league on fire. But
great walking into this year, but the guy is taking another step in his game to beat zone coverage, to actually separate. We were not seeing these types of things, both even when I looked at him as a prospect or when he got to the NFL, but he's doing it now. So got to adjust.
He's wide receiver 25 in consensus. Erickson, is that too high, too low, or just right?
Let's see. Where do I have him? So I have him in that similar range.
Too low.
I mean, the Jaguars have been pretty bad against perimeter wide receivers. So again, it's just a matter of with the Steelers overall. It's like, how long can they keep this up? Like, that's really what the point is with George Pickens, because a lot of his catches are, down the field, on the sideline. So it's like just very low probability catches that he's making, but he's delivering because he's good. Like, I think that we all agreed he was a good receiver, good prospect coming in. It was just a matter of like his role in the offense. And it's not usually great for fantasy, but he continues to prove us wrong, as the Steelers do, because somehow they're 4-2 and they've been outgained in every single game they've played this year, but they continue to keep winning. Don't know how, because Mike Tomlin sold his soul to somebody to get the Steelers to keep winning games that they should not win. So I think that he should definitely be in your. You can't take him out. I think that he's a locked and loaded fantasy wide receiver too, with more upside if he ends up taking one deep.
He's inside my top 20 this week.
Speaking of those Jaguars, Erickson, give me your first must-start receiver.
Yeah, I'm going back to Calvin Ridley. He's coming off a horrible game on Thursday Night Football. Basically got erased from the Saints defense, or by the Saints defense. But look, the usage is still there for him. He's still running the most routes on the team. He still led the team in air yards. He leads the team in air yard share this season at 36%. And look, just 2 weeks ago, he caught 7 balls for 122 yards. Look, he's not the fantasy wide receiver one that we thought he was going to be after week 1, but he's still a receiver that can deliver spiked weeks in good matchups. And the Steelers have been a horrible team against wide receivers. Now, it's really been more in the slot. So again, you're still starting Christian Kirk, but look, Calvin Ridley, he's going to have big games here and there. And I think this is one that against the Steelers secondary that's not that good. They're ranked 4th in explosive pass plays allowed this year on defense, 2nd highest average depth of target faced. So they're getting beat deep. And that's really where Calvin Ridley has been his most productive when they've been targeting downfield, which they didn't do last week against the Saints with Trevor Lawrence banged up. So I think that Ridley, he's been frustrating to own, but I think this is a matchup where he can deliver.
Wide receiver 27 this week. DBro, too high, too low, just right?
It's pretty much just right. I've got Calvin Ridley at wide receiver 31, and I think he's in that tier of wide receiver 3s. And I already have him ranked higher, and we're going to talk about another Jaguars wide receiver that I believe is going to go off this week. But yeah, Ridley, I think somewhere in that wide receiver 3 tier is about right.
DBro, let's stick with you for your next wide receiver.
Yeah, man. The next guy I got to bring up here is Josh Downs. He has been on a hot streak, and I think it continues this week. You look at what the Saints do. They play a lot of man coverage. They have the 7th highest rate of man coverage this year. Talked about this in previous shows. Josh Downs is the guy that the Colts go to versus man coverage. Against man coverage, 22% target share. You look at zone, it's only 16%. Versus man coverage, he leads the team with a 23% first read share and 2.1 yards per route run, as well as Alontae Taylor has been struggling since they moved him into being the nickel corner this year. Alontae Taylor is giving up a 66% catch rate, 100.2 passer rating in his coverage. I think Josh Downs, again, we keep talking about him. He's stacking these wide receiver 3 or higher games. Going to be another week where he's a wide receiver 3 or better.
Double-digit fantasy points in 4 of the last 5 weeks.
Crushing.
He's becoming very consistent, very, very fun to watch. I'm really excited, for the leagues in which I was able to pick up Downs. He's a fun one. Where do you have Downs this week, Erickson?
I have him above Michael Pittman. I know that.
Yeah.
He's a wide receiver. He's in the wide receiver 3 range for me.
I got him at wide receiver 32.
Yeah.
He's right behind Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, that's another surprising sentence to hear after, if you could have told somebody that, 2 months ago. Say goodbye to your own start-sit dilemmas with FantasyPros Start-Sit Assistant. Within seconds, you'll know exactly who to play for optimal results each and every week. Leveraging insights from numerous experts, the Start-Sit Assistant aligns your lineup decisions with the top minds in fantasy football, giving you a competitive edge. Maximize your lineup's potential with just a few clicks. Head to fantasypros.com/myplaybook and make winning decisions in no time. Erickson, who's your next must-start receiver?
All right, he's back from the bye week. Should be fully healthy. I'm going to start T. Higgins. I like the matchup here against the San Francisco 49ers. They're 10th in fantasy points per game allowed to wide receivers, 6th most fantasy points allowed per game to wide receivers lined up on the perimeter on the boundary. And Higgins is fully healthy. So I get that he's had basically one good game the entire season. He's been banged up. Joe Burrow's been banged up. But I think that this is a statement game for the Bengals and their offense coming on. The 49ers are hurting right now. They are dealing with a lot of injuries. And this is the healthiest we may see the Bengals at any point this year, is coming off their bye week. So I want to be ahead of the curve here. And T. Higgins has shown that he can deliver massive ceilings in games that are high paced, that are a little bit back and forth. So I like him a lot in this spot. And if you have him, you've been sitting on him, obviously disappointed with him. But I would believe in Joe Burrow, and that means I'm going to believe in T. Higgins in a solid matchup.
Yeah, I'm not saying you're wrong, but you said he's had one good game. He's had one non-abysmal game. In every other game besides that game against the Ravens in week 2, he is combined for 6 catches for 60 yards this season, 9 fantasy points in half PPR. So I can't blame anybody who's still like a little gun shy about starting T. Higgins. DBro, where do you have him?
Oh, T. Higgins. I've got T. Higgins as a wide receiver 3 this week. And this is not that I don't like T. Higgins. I just think that there are other guys in the similar range, and I think this is going to be a massive Jamar Chase game.
Okay. DBro, stick with you. Give me your last must-start receiver.
I teased it earlier. It's Christian Kirk week, baby. We're talking about Christian Kirk versus man coverage. Pittsburgh's top 10 in man coverage rate. They're actually 5th highest in the NFL. Against man coverage, Christian Kirk, 30% target share, 32% first read share. And just to give a little bit of context here, against zone, only a 20% target share and 23% first read share. Those jump 10 to 13%. It's massive, man. Christian Kirk is going to eat the Steelers alive this week. And this all flows down. Like we talked about Calvin Ridley, we talked about Christian Kirk. You need to be higher on Trevor Lawrence. Jaguars are winning this game, baby. I love it. It's going to be a shootout.
Yeah, you guys both picking receivers from this game. So I hope you're right. I think it's going to be a really fun game, actually. Erickson, who's your last must-start receiver?
Nico Collins, another guy coming off of his team's bye week. But look, Nico Collins, the reason he's been so good this year, he destroys man coverage, and he's a yak monster. Yards after the catch machine. He just destroys and takes the souls of defensive backs with his physicality. And the Carolina Panthers, second in missed tackles on defense this year. So he's going to have the chance to break some tackles when he gets the ball in his hands. I do like Tank Dell a lot in this matchup too. Tank Dell's actually been a lot better against zone coverage, which is going to probably see what the Texans see more of. So it's not that man coverage look that we usually want to target Nico Collins in, but I still want to play Collins in this matchup just because the Panthers defense overall is just not great. I like CJ Stroud this week, so I want to pair him obviously with his number 1 guy who has been mostly Nico Collins, especially the last time they played because Dell was out. So I like the Texans offense overall. I mean, talked about Dameon Pierce already. I'm just going to double down here with Nico Collins as well.
Yeah, I'm all in on Collins in general, but specifically this week as well. He's wide receiver 20 in ECR, and honestly, I think that might be too low. Now, that's easy for me to say because I don't actually have to move anybody down to move them up since I don't have rankings that I have to share, but I think he's going to be higher than that. I love the matchup. I love the player. They're coming off the bye. Like, I think it's a total smash spot for Nico. DBro, I assume you agree. I know you like Nico a lot too.
I love Nico. I love the entire Texans passing attack this week. I'm going to have Nico. I've got him at wide receiver 17. And yeah, I mean, you don't have to twist my arm to sit here and move him up. I'm going to have him and Tank Dell. When it's all said and done before the slate locks on Sunday, I will have both of these Texans wide receivers above VCR. VCR keeps going up. I'm just going to keep going up too.
I love that strategy. DBro, George Pickens or DJ Moore this week?
Oh, Pickens. Easy Pickens.
How about Josh Downs or Rashee Rice?
I'm gonna take the guy that actually plays a full-time role in his offense. Give me Josh Downs. Rashee Rice with his 50 to 60% route share every single week. If he does not score a touchdown, I wrote this up in the primary. If he doesn't score a touchdown, you're gonna be very upset you played Rashee Rice.
How about Christian Kirk or Zay Flowers?
Zay Flowers. It's Zay Day, baby. I'm going Zay Flowers. And the funny thing with that worm, I have them back to back in my rankings. Zay is wide receiver 14. Kirk is wide receiver 15.
So try and start them both if you can. But if you had to pick, you go Zay.
Yeah, I'm going Zay. This is the breakout game for Zay. We haven't seen a ceiling game. It's this week.
Yeah. Speaking of breakout games, Erickson, Calvin Ridley or Jordan Addison?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I mean, I think you gotta stay in the flames with Addison. He's been too good. And again, like don't tempt fate at this point. It's like, yeah, like Calvin Ridley's got a good matchup this week, but it's like Jordan Addison just has been scoring points every single week. So like, don't take him out of your lineup. Whereas Ridley has to be is way more matchup dependent. And even though the Vikings are on the road in Green Bay, not ideal. I mean, like Addison's in fuego right now, and he's a rookie receiver. So it's like we could say, oh, can he keep this up? It's like all we've seen is him be good. I feel like we haven't seen him be bad at any point. So why tempt fate? So Addison for me.
He's also the exact definition of a league winner. Like these rookie receivers who are good in, small sample sizes early in the season, they start to get more workload and they just explode in the second half. It happens every single year. Not guaranteeing it'll happen with him.
All those guys, it starts with Kenny. Like, remember, let's be kind of rewind. Remember when Amon-Ra started that long stretch and everybody's like, he can't keep doing it, can he? Oh, crap, he's still doing it. 3 weeks later, he's still doing it. He's still out there catching touchdowns. How's he doing it? That's how it always starts, where people are like, there's no way. You can't do it.
Yeah.
You can't keep doing it. No way, no way, no way. And
Happens
4 weeks later,
year.
still happening.
Erickson, how about T. Higgins or the guy that we never pick, but that I include in these questions every week because he's always in the same range, and that's Drake London.
Ooh.
T. Higgins or Drake London?
Yeah.
It's really... I think for me, it's a ceiling floor play. So I think London, you know what you're going to get from him. Again, it's a good matchup against the Titans. They have a bad secondary, and he's the target leader, but I want to fade the Falcons as much as humanly possible when they play on the road because Desmond Ridder's horrible. Desmond Ridder was begging the Buccaneers to win the game last week, kept fumbling the ball in the red zone, constantly trying to get.
Erickson, I've been told Desmond Ridder is a franchise quarterback now. Okay, he's good. He's very good.
I think London is a safer. London's a safer play. I think he has a higher floor, but I think that Higgins if Chase doesn't have the big blow-up game, then it's probably going to be T. Higgins that has the big blow-up game. So if I'm shooting for ceiling, I would go with Higgins.
All right, Erickson, how about Nico Collins or Jacoby Myers?
Nico Collins for me. The Raiders, I don't even know who their quarterback is. And really, Jacoby Myers has, the dude has been absolutely balling out, but a lot of his splits are much better with Jimmy Garoppolo. And actually, his worst game did come when Aiden O'Connell was the starting quarterback, which that's what it kind of looks like it's trending for them to play O'Connell if Jimmy Garoppolo can't play because, they should have played him last week, but they didn't because
you don't want Brian Hoyer Pardue? You don't want that in your life, Erickson?
Dude, I once they announced that Brian Hoyer was going to start that game, I just tweeted out Bears +3 lock button. What do you know? Bears won outright.
All right, let's go to the quarterback, tight end, and defense/special teams. DBro, hit me with your guys.
All right, well, talked about George Pickens. Let's team with the quarterback. Kenny Pickett, baby. Kenny Pickett had his best game of the season last week with Deontay Johnson, George Pickens back in the fold as far as passing grade, yards per attempt, all those different metrics. The guy had 9.2 yards per attempt. This is easily his best game of the season. So going against a pass funnel defense in the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are allowing the second highest passing yards per game, ninth most passing touchdowns, I think Kenny Pickett could be a sneaky QB1 this week. Going with the tight end position, it's Jake Ferguson week, man. We've seen this time and time again where the Rams, their outside corner play is extremely good, so they funnel everything to the middle of the field, and the tight ends eat. We saw Dallas Goedert do this. You've seen other guys have productive weeks. Jake Ferguson is playing a full-time role in this Dallas Cowboys offense now, and against the Rams, they've allowed the highest yards per reception to tight ends, the sixth most receiving yards, and the fifth most fantasy points per game. So it's Ferg week, baby. And as far as the defense, Miami Dolphins, and I know they have not been fantastic this season, but this comes down to Mac Jones versus pressure. And the Dolphins have pressured at the seventh highest rate in the NFL. Mac Jones has fallen apart to pieces versus pressure. Second highest turnover worthy play rate, eighth lowest passing grade under pressure. I think Mac Jones can have a good game in this one, but still, quarterbacks can have good games and still take 4 sacks, throw 2 picks, and still have good games in fantasy for us. So while I think Mac Jones, and I'm probably going to rank him above consensus, he does fall apart against pressure. Dolphins can bring it, and we're still going to talk about we can get sacks, we can get turnovers with Mac Jones.
So Kenny Pickett obviously is not ranked very highly in ECR. He's down at QB 22, so a low-end QB2 this week. Obviously, you're higher on him this week, and it's kind of going, maybe not going out on a limb, but you're definitely being aggressive on him. So similar to what we do with Cam Akers, just give me some names that you're starting Pickett over that will surprise people.
I'm going to start Kenny Pickett over Desmond Ridder. I'm going to start him over Sam Howell. I'm going to start him over Russell Wilson. Brock Purdy doesn't go and it's the Sam Darnold show, I do not want any part of Syndrome and his red flaming hair. Give me Kenny Pickett.
Derek Carr or Kenny Pickett.
I have Derek Carr above him, and that's just a volume play, but it's close. I have them in the same range. Derek Carr is QB 14 and Pickett is QB 16. Who would you take, Erickson?
I don't know. I'm going to find out on Sunday when I put one of them in my starting lineup. I haven't decided yet.
By the way,
that sounds like Russian roulette. Okay, ching. Oh God. Oh, I hope I live through this.
By the way, Syndrome, all-time great villain, so I appreciate that reference.
Finally, a good movie take from Worm. I mean, you're kind of due by this point, Worm.
Yeah, I mean, it's just regression to the mean at this point.
I mean, seriously. I mean, you're bound to hit on. I mean,
I'm in the right
range. You're bound to hit the board eventually, man.
Well, first of all, I was with you on Tombstone last week, and also I'm like the right age for the Pixar movies. Incredibles is my favorite Pixar movie. So
were you 5 years old when Incredibles came out? We need to get some good.
I was 12 when Incredibles came out, which is kind of the perfect age for
now.
it.
I feel even older. Thanks, Warren.
Erickson, give me your QB TEDST.
I'm going to go with CJ Stroud again. Just going full sweep here with the Texans against the Carolina Panthers. The offensive line is fully healthy for the Houston Texans. Last 2 games played, CJ Stroud has been the 4th least pressured quarterback. So he's operating from a clean pocket. Carolina is pretty middle of the road in terms of generating pressure anyway. He ranks 3rd passing touchdowns from a clean pocket, 5th in passer rating. And the Panthers have allowed 2+ passing touchdowns in 3 straight games. So I think CJ Stroud, you're going to keep playing him. And you guys, I have to be honest with you. Like, I had to drop CJ Stroud for one of my teams. Because I had to pick up a quarterback, and I'm very sad, and that's why I have to start Kenny Pickett or Derek Carr this week.
Dear. So the league made you pay for it. They said, for your insolence.
I immediately once I dropped, and I was like, I just made the worst mistake. Just like one of those things. Sunday morning, you're panicking. You're like, so many things are going on, and I just blew it, and I deserve to lose now.
The experts, they're just like us.
I deserve to suffer, so I'm just going to keep on suffering. All right, tight end. Luke Musgrave, if he's healthy, again, he's dealing with an ankle injury. He did not practice on Wednesday, but it's not a concussion, so I think that he should be okay to suit up when the game actually happens. But good matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. 8th receptions targets allowed per game to tight ends this season. Last 3 games, Musgrave has 4+ catches and 5+ targets. The last 3 games that he has been healthy. So I think Musgrave is a decent streaming option if you're hurting at the tight end position. And then DST, it's going to be Falcons. Look, they're going to get sacks because they're facing basically a different version of Sam Howell between Malik Willis and Will Levis. I don't really care which one of them it is. Like, they're going to take 1 million sacks regardless. That's what Will Levis, that's the only thing he did at college was take sacks. And Malik Willis came in like briefly in the London game and took 4 sacks. like immediately stepped in and just got sacked a bunch of different times. They hold onto the ball way too long. I think that game's going to be ugly. Just a low-scoring game between the Titans and Falcons. I actually think the Titans are going to come away with the upset because that's just what Mike Vrabel does, like Mike Tomlin. Just like everyone writes him off and they win because that's just what they do. But I think it's going to be an ugly game regardless, and I think there's going to be a lot of sacks. So Falcons defense, Titans defense, I think both those are very strongly in play, but prefer Atlanta.
Are you starting CJ Stroud or Trevor Lawrence this week?
Starting CJ Stroud.
DBro, before I get out of here, where do you have Stroud ranked this week?
QB7, baby. I got him right behind Justin Herbert. We're wheels up.
All in on the Texans this week. We will get out of there on that. Actually, let me do a quick recap here. Joe Mixon, Dameon Pierce, Javonte Williams, Gus Edwards, Cam Akers, Emari Demercado are our must-start running backs. George Pickens, Calvin Ridley, Josh Downs, T. Higgins, Christian Kirk, Nico Collins are the wide receivers. And then we're starting Kenny Pickett, CJ Stroud, Jake Ferguson, Luke Musgrave, Dolphins DST, and the Falcons DST for Erickson and DBro. I am Ryan Wormeli. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Let's have a great week 8. We'll see you next time.